Welcome to the Writing Gym Podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to Leg Lifts with Renee Hasseldine. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's guest, but first, a word from our sponsor, the Writing Gym. You know, you could break free from feeling like your writing is never good enough. You know, you could write freely and achieve your publishing dreams. You're tired of rejection and lying awake till 2 a.m. wondering how you could have fixed your manuscript. Wallowing in self-doubt is not getting you any closer to your writing goals. You need real standards, real support, and real change. Are you ready to transform your writing and take it from the slush pile to publishable? We are currently accepting select writers in the Writing Gym. Visit www.writing-gym.com to apply. And now I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym Podcast, Annalisa Parent.
Thanks, Andy. I'm glad to be here with you again.
Listen, everyone, I don't want to tell little lies about Annalisa, and I promise this one is true. And even if she is an amazing writing coach, she has some absolutely crazy family stories. Annalisa is actually a member of a very exclusive society called the Mayflower Society. It's exactly what it sounds like. She can trace her ancestry back to a specific relative on the Mayflower. What do you have to say about that, Annalisa?
Well, April showers bring Mayflowers, but what do Mayflowers bring?
What do they bring?
Pilgrims. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Girl week.
That was a total cheesy joke. See more about Annalisa's involvement with the Mayflower Society in the show notes at www.writing-gym.com/passion. And now to introduce you to our fabulous guest this week. Renee excels at cutting through the noise and frustration of both on and offline course design, effortlessly streamlining and packaging products with ease, yet with a cheekily fun and uniquely exciting approach. Her knack for extracting powerful ideas and transforming them into neat, inspired, leveraged products is sheer genius. Renee shares her signature 7-stage process in her best-selling book, Share Your Passion, and is a regular contributor to both Smallville, an online business resource for small business owners, and the Huffington Post. Welcome to the podcast, Renee.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I am so excited that you're here, Renee. I mean, not only do you have an amazing Australian accent, but I love your energy that you bring to everything that you do. You just have such a great enthusiasm, and I've been following your work for a while, and it's such an honor to have you here this week with us. So let's talk about your book. So tell us about your book and how you wrote that book.
Well, so my book is called Share Your Passion, and it's the 7 stages to leverage your expertise and make a difference. And so really, I have a 7-stage process, and my book is based on that. And the 7 stages is basically about, extracting all that knowledge that you have in your head. This is for, experts, coaches, thought leaders, extracting that knowledge out of your head and turning it into products. And so the process actually works whether you're writing a book or creating a course or creating a workshop, all these things, extracting that knowledge and turning it into a methodology. This is the bit I get excited about, especially if you turn it into a diagram, like, infographics. I nerd out on that. That's like, business porn to me. Like, show me it in an infographic, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you really know your stuff. It's totally unjustified, right? You still know exactly the same as you did before you drew it in a picture, but once it's in a picture for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really concrete. So I really love working with people to do that. So my 7-stage process takes you through doing that. And so when I went to write my book, because I'd already run the 7-stage process on myself, I was just like ready to go, because basically it was based on my 7-stage process. So my structure was really, really clear. And I wrote the first draft of my book in 3 days. And I'm not kidding.
Wow. And that's a testament to how well you knew your material and your process and what it was that you wanted to say. And, you know, one of the things that we talk about in the Be the Expert who wrote the book on it, the retreat for entrepreneurs, is that the thinking part is really the hard part, right? The writing really, I mean, it's work, but it should be the easier part. It's really the, what do I want to say and how do I want to say it? Those are the real questions. So it sounds like you had those wrapped up before you even sat down with your fingers to the keyboard or your pen to paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because, so stage 4 in my process is, you know, extracting that methodology. And I take people through this really simple process where we get everything that you do with your clients. So say your client starts at point A and you want to get them to point B, then we think about, well, what are all the steps in between to get them from A to B? And so we're, you know, I love to use Post-it notes. Color is great. So we put one idea per Post-it note and stick them all up on the wall. And so when you do that, you see right in front of you, okay, these are all the things that I do with my clients. These are the questions I ask. These are the activities that we go through. These are the processes and thoughts and things that we do together when we're getting from A to B. And so having all those things up on there and you look at them and you think, oh my goodness, that's 500 of my clients. That's not a process. So then what we need to do is chunk that into some really neat chunks, because our brain can handle sort of 2 to 9 pieces of information at a time. So if we can chunk that into somewhere between 2 and 9 chunks, then we've got a process that's memorable, something that people can easily recall. So, you know, if I say the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we know that's Stephen Covey's work. It's really well known. It's obvious. That's a really simple thing to remember. Then what I do with working with experts is extracting that and working out, well, what is that for you? What is your core methodology? What is your thing that you'll be known for, your legacy that will outlast you? So once you do that Post-it note exercise and chunk it, then hopefully, you know, you're looking then at what is your equivalent of your 7 habits, you know, whether that's going to be 7 stages or whether it's going to be the 5 elements or the 5 keys to relationships or whatever it is that you're the expert on. You're creating that methodology and then putting it there. So so once you do that with your Post-it notes, you've got your chunks. Underneath each of those chunks, then obviously, because you've got, you know, all your 500 Post-it notes, they then become your kind of checklist, if you like. So for each chunk now, you've got a checklist, and you can turn that checklist into your free opt-in on your website, for example. And so I had that when I went to write my book. So stage 1, I had my checklist, and so all I had to do was write to each point in my checklist, and my book was written. It was so, and because I know my material so well, and when you're an expert, you know your material so well, if you've got that really laid out clearly, in a checklist form or in a really clear structure, it's so quick and easy to write. And I really enjoyed that. So there you go. That's how I did it.
That is such wonderful advice. And, you know, one of our very first episodes was with Jill Scheffelbein of Entrepreneur Magazine. And so she wrote her book and was published by Entrepreneur Press. And she talked about that same process. She said she should be sponsored by Post-it notes because, you know, working with she did it on her closet door of like moving those Post-it notes around, and that's so powerful. I'm a floor sorter. I like pieces of paper on the floor. It's the same process. You just kind of move them, and then I have to put them on a bulletin board because if I left them on the floor, that would be terrible. But you know, that's how I organize everything that I do, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It's a really powerful exercise. I saw Andy with her pen flying, so I know she's taking really great notes on that, and we'll definitely have a handout on that at the website talking about what the process is for doing that. So thank you for that really great tip. So then let's hop from, you know, how did you start to how did you end? Let's talk a little bit about your revision process. What did that look like? It sounds like you had a lot of direction, so I'm guessing that there wasn't a whole lot of revision that needed to happen, but what did that look like for you?
So for me, because I went on a book writing retreat, and so at 6 o'clock on the Friday night, I handed in my manuscript, which basically meant I emailed my Word document to the crew. And then from that point, It went through 2 or 3 rounds of editing. So they had an editing and proofreading team, and they did that at their end, and then they'd send it back to me to revise. And we did, we went through that 2 or 3 times. And then, and I also had a few trusted colleagues that I gave a copy of it to as well, to get their honest feedback as well, to make sure that it was at a really high standard, because I have standards. and then basically from there, the crew took over. They did a whole lot. They got the cover design done. While we were on retreat, we had our photos taken, our branding photos for the book. So we had all the other stuff was done. Like, my only job really while on retreat was to write my book. I mean, that's probably why I could do it in 3 days as well. Besides my process, was that I had an awesome support crew. So I did not lift a finger for 7 days. Someone else was making me cups of tea and running the bath and lighting the candles. And, it's really easy to focus on writing the book when there are no other things to do. So I think that also is probably a big key, is kind of creating the space and having the support around to not be distracted or procrastinate. Because, if I was writing it at home, for example, it'd be, I'll just put another load of washing on, or I'm just going to check Facebook, and I'm just going to do this. And, the day's gone and I haven't written a word. Yeah. So, when you set aside time to go and write a book, I think that really makes a difference. So
yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head for what we do at the Be the Expert Who Wrote the Book on It retreat. And, same experience that you had. It's so powerful to set aside that time and to have experts there that if you get stuck, if you have questions about what you should do next, you've set aside that time to make it happen. So we will definitely put a link to sign-ups. We have a waiting list right now for our next retreat, Be the Expert Who Wrote the Book on It. Location to be determined, but it will be a beautiful location. So take Renee's advice. It's
yes.
Get away from the dishes and Facebook, and just set aside that time to make your book happen. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, and when you do that, you've made a commitment to yourself as well. You've paid good money to be there. You better follow through. You've got that leverage with yourself to, really commit and follow through and make sure it happens. And I think that also holds you accountable as well. And you also mentioned, Annalisa, about having the support there, having the experts there to get you through when you get stuck. And I think that that's a really important aspect that you can't underestimate, because although my process was really laid out, and so the 7 stages process was really easy for me to write, I kind of haven't really touched on the introductory part of my book, where I kind of did my background and my story. And that bit I actually found much, much harder. I thought it was going to be, 1 page. I was going to kind of skim over it. But actually, once I start writing it, I realized it was a bigger part of the book than I had imagined. And so that's where I got stuck, because my stuff came up. Because, I use some quite strong language. I won't say it on your show, Annalisa. I use some quite strong language as one of the titles of my chapters. And I was thinking, and the bizarre thing was, what bothered me about that was, will my mother-in-law ever speak to me again? And I really needed to process and work through that and think, okay, well, but this is who I am. This is my brand. This is this is how passionate I feel about this. I don't want to water it down. So I had to work through my stuff around my relationship with my mother-in-law and how that would be impacted by using a particular word. So.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, people struggle with that with memoir as well, of course. So I'm gonna sum up this conversation in a graphic, because I know you love them, right? So we've got the triangle of support, and on one point we've got having the support to write your book. On one point we've got accountability, and on the third point we've got time. And that really is like the magic triangle of getting your book done.
Oh, I love that. Oh, she's made a diagram, and now I'm in heaven.
I'm big on triangles. And
I'm big on Venn diagrams, so there you go.
I love those too. Yeah, when I spoke at Writers Digest annual convention last summer, I went on this tangent. And I think one of the reasons why I like triangles, and I'll share this tangent here. So here's me geeking out. The triangle is the strongest structure because no matter which way you squash it, it doesn't fall down. And so that was the key to creating the tallest building in the world, which at one time was the Eiffel Tower in Paris in 1889. And the way that Eiffel did it was to use triangles as the structure. And he was the very first person to figure that out. So there's a little factoid of the day. Triangles are strong. And so, you know, my analogy to that, and the reason why I like using them for diagrams, is like we've got the strongest structure in the universe. Like, use this powerful tool. So there we go.
I love that. That is brilliant. Very cool. Triangles and Venn diagrams. We could nerd out all day long.
There we go. That's our next book, Renee. Renee.
Oh my God. Nails it. Quickly runs off to register next domain.
So obviously the writing retreat was a fantastic opportunity and gave you exactly what you needed to finish your book. I mean, that's something, you know, Annalisa offers that course, the ability to go on a writing retreat with other people and get that kind of support that you need. And that's also something really cool that our sponsor does in the writing gym, you know, giving you that support, you know, for those people that, you know, you have a 9-to-5 job, you're not able to go on a writing retreat as much as you would love to, you know, that's just not an option for you. You know, we have a website that's all set up that gives you the ability to get that, you know, triangle of support, to have that community of authors that's going to support you, to have the accountability in the form of me. You know, you have to send me your word count. If you don't have it, then you're not accountable for your work. What were you doing this whole time? Probably watching Netflix and eating popcorn. Why are you doing that and not writing? And then, you know, you get the time to do it, which is, you know, if you are held accountable for that work, then you get it done. You know, there's a reason that homework is such a good structure, and why when you work with a writing coach like Annalisa, she will say, you know, oh, well, I need X amount of pages or X amount of words by this time, because deadlines, they're good. I think they're good for most of us writers, because otherwise, you know, we just kind of like float off into the, well, I could change this and then it would be this, and I could change this and it would be this. Was there an aspect of that in the writing retreat for you? Like you said, you went in really strong knowing what you had to do, but was there any point where you kind of doubted and went like, oh, but what if I do this and change all of this and do this and this and this, and kind of panicked about it?
I didn't have that. I had the struggles that I mostly had were about that sort of personal story stuff that I mentioned at the beginning, because, you know, a lot of people will take a couple of years to write a book. And I think when you're doing that, it is a personal development journey. Like your stuff comes up, but you know, if you're writing over 1 or 2 years at home, you've got time to process that. When you condense it into 7 days, it's like, woof, intense personal development. You know, it's pretty intense. So, I would say we didn't have that, but we did have, in terms of like the checking in and the accountability, at each mealtime, we would all state what our word count was, and it would go up on the whiteboard. And so that was, you know, and I'm a little competitive, so let's face it, I had to be up there.
Oh yeah, that's really good motivation though.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like stabs the inner competitive person in me. Poke, poke, poke,
yeah.
Poke. Yeah. And then we'd commit to what our goal was for the next session. So, you know, say we're sitting down at lunchtime and we'd state what our current word count is and say, okay, I'm going to write 5,000 words before dinner. And then we'd go do that.
Yeah, and you know, you raise an interesting point about writing about ourselves. You know, when we're writing fiction, we're still writing about ourselves. When we're writing our expert books, we're still writing about ourselves, right? Everything, you know, to be an author, to be a creator, you know, all of that is coming from within us, regardless of what genre we're writing in. But when we have to use I and really show up and talk about, this is who I am and this is why I do what I do, that's really, really hard. And it can be hard because we maybe get in our own way because of baggage, or because sometimes it's hard to see ourselves accurately or as others might see us. We don't understand that. And, that particular problem, the second one of just not being able to kind of see ourselves, one of the things, my favorite activity that we do at the Entrepreneur Retreat is to really dig into that. And what I'm writing right now, Andy doesn't even know this, but what I write for the first hour of my day, and what I'm writing right now, and will have finished, here you go, personal trainer in the writing gym, I will have finished by the end of the month, is a workbook that works people through how to tell a story about yourself and helps them really dig into those questions that if you just sit and look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, I don't know what to say, right? So, I took all the exercises that we do at the retreat and turned them into systems. So I'm really excited about that, to help people kind of do that work, because it was hard for me when I wrote my website to talk about myself, so I get it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really valuable resource that you're creating there, because, I think it's the word I, as you say, I'm putting myself out there and the whole world can see it. And there's, it brings up our stuff about, I'm not, will I be liked? Will people like me? Am I good enough? All that stuff that it brings up when you're putting yourself out there like that. You need to be vulnerable to be an author. You can't, you're visible and you're vulnerable, and it's right out there for everyone to see, and they're going to take it or leave it.
Absolutely. And, I think that the thing that's hardest for writers is not only the vulnerability that writing is in putting yourself out there in the world, but then you add to that this really high level of rejection when it comes to publishing, right? And so, this is hard stuff that writers are dealing with to become published authors. And even if you go the self-publishing route, right, there's still some rejection around, is mine a bestseller? How many people liked it on Amazon today? Are people buying it? There's some rejection that's intrinsic in this thing that we do and getting ourselves out there. So, kudos to you, Renee, for putting your work out there. Kudos to Andy, who's working hard on an amazing novel. And to everybody listening, just take that time to really pat yourself on the back and say, I'm doing something amazing, and I've got that courage to put myself out there, and really take that seriously. That's a big deal, to take that step into becoming a writer.
It is a big deal. If it was easier, everyone would do it. That's what sets authors apart, because you really need to have the courage to put yourself out there. So I think that, as you said, it is hard. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So talk about why it's worth it. So what has this book done for you now that it's out in the world and you've got readers and it's a bestseller? What is that like?
Well, I love the title of your retreat, Be the Expert Who Wrote the Book on It, because it kind of really, it does make a difference in exactly the way that retreat name kind of says. I've been invited to speaking gigs, getting speaking gigs now, getting, being a guest on podcasts, my visibility and my exposure has skyrocketed because I'm a best-selling author, and that just makes a massive difference to my credibility. Whether or not I don't know more than I did before I wrote the book necessarily. Although I am, constantly learning and growing. So yes, incrementally, but really the book itself doesn't mean that I'm any smarter than I was the day before I had the book, but it does add an element of credibility and authority when you're an expert out there in the world, and it just is your point of difference. So for me, it means credibility and authority, and in speaking with clients, or if I'm speaking to a new potential client, I can send them a book. I don't even have business. I don't bother having business cards. For me, my books, it's not about book sales for me in terms of revenue. In my business, the way that my book works is, if I go along to a networking event and I meet someone, I think, oh, there's some collaboration opportunity here. I'd really like to, develop a relationship here, and maybe we'll work together somehow. I don't give them a business card. I give them a copy of my book and I sign it. And that's memorable. If someone walks away from a networking event with a signed copy of a book, that makes a bigger difference. That's a bigger impact. And so that is, I guess that's another way that I like to use my book, is to help to spread the word about what it is that I do, and to add that credibility and authority.
Oh, that's really great. I mean, that's a really great takeaway for people. And, I think that your story of success, if we go back to what we were just talking about, which is, kind of the fear or the insecurity, when we see people like you who have really made it and done something powerful with a book and impacted people's lives, like that's the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the prize for working through that fear and the insecurity. And am I good enough? And is anybody going to like it? And is my mother-in-law going to disown me? We don't know.
Will I be excommunicated?
So that's a really great story of success that you have, that you can now be that expert, that you've changed people's lives, that people are reaching out to you because you had the courage to put this book out into the world. So it's a wonderful success story.
Thanks, Annalisa.
So on that note of the wonderful success story, there is one thing that we ask every single guest that we have. It's the big important question. And that is, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring authors, what would it be?
I think it would be do the Post-it note exercise. Really, I love structure. And also, and I can only speak for authors who are writing an expert book. I have no expertise whatsoever when it comes to writing a novel. So, my apologies if this does not apply to you. But I think one of the challenges I have when I've seen some authors write their books, some experts write their book, is that I find it hard to follow. Wishy-washy, goes off on tangents. So for me, and the way that my brain works, I really love having a really clear structure. So, if you can create that methodology, create that structure, turn it into an infographic, stick it in the book, a triangle or a Venn diagram or whatever it might be. Make it strong.
Well, and you say, maybe that can apply to people who, you're the expert in writing the expert books. But, as somebody who works mostly on fiction novels, like, the Post-it exercise is still completely something that you can do. Because, if you have a list of character names and then, each character arc and then figuring out where they all fit together, like that kind of advice and getting a visual of how things are happening, whether you're writing an expert book or, a science fiction fantasy novel for world building, that's a fantastic idea. So everybody, Renee's telling everyone, do the Post-it exercise. You will benefit.
Yay, I'm so excited it works for fiction.
Oh, thank you so much, Renee. That's such good advice. And to find out more about Renee, check out her website. We've provided a link in the show notes at www.writing-gym.com/passion. You can also purchase her fantastic book, Share Your Passion. If you're looking for her genius in 140 characters or less, you can find her on Twitter at Course Creation. Of course, we will always include all of these links in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing all of your fantastic knowledge today, Renee.
It's been great fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Annalisa, for more of your great writing advice. Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres, and in my opinion, is pretty much the best at her job. You could publish if you only knew how. Renee has given us some great tips today, writers, but look, if you love the Writing Gym podcast and if you find these tips valuable, think of how much faster your writing will get pumped into publishing shape in the Writing Gym. We take you from generating ideas to getting them onto paper, from how to find an agent to how to market your book. You'll also connect with other writers who will support you and give you quality feedback. We even have a personal trainer, me, to help keep you accountable to your writing goals. You know how you always say, I love to write, but I just can't find the time? Well, what would it be like to have a gentle guide, someone to check in with you on how you're doing on your weekly writing goals? Well, you can, and that's me. You can get the accountability you need to make the time for writing in the Writing Gym. If you're serious about pumping your writing into publishing shape, apply now. Go to writing-gym.com. Don't forget the dash. As always, be sure to check out this week's step-by-step guide on how to better your writing at www.writing-gym.com/passion. Happy writing!
This has been the Writing Gym Podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.